This is From Courtroom to Carline, the podcast where we discuss life as a lawyer and a parent.
I'm Jenna.
And I'm Rick.
Your hosts and partners both in the courtroom and in parenting.
Join us as we navigate the fascinating worlds of law and family life.
Now, this is not legal advice, but in every episode, From Courtroom to Carline is a delightful blend of legal insight and parenting hilarity.
Get ready for a roller coaster ride where law meets love and where the gavel meets the car line.
Welcome to another episode of From Courtroom to Carline, a legal parenting podcast. And on today's episode, it is just me and Rick. And as a reminder, guys, if you need or want 10 free CLE credits, watch season 1, and then you can email support@accidentarrest.com, and our legal assistant will give you the code to put in. Everybody loves some good free CLEs.
Yes, absolutely. So on today's episode, Jenna and I are going to talk about our journey to finding a commercial building for our law firm. We're proud to announce that we're finally under contract at least.
And by the time this episode goes out, we will hopefully have closed on the property.
Yes, absolutely. So we figured we'd talk about that because I think every business owner needs to, look for that property that they can call their own, that they can have their home base for their business. And there are a lot of things that we learned along the way over the past 2 years when we first began our search. So we wanted to talk a little bit about that. So Jenna, sort of bring us to what motivated us to buy a building as opposed to just lease. What do you think sort of drove that decision in the first place?
So I'm going to take it back to when Rick had his firm and it was just the Fletcher law practice, just him. Very grateful for the attorney that he was able to work out of, his office.
Shout out to Mr. Watts. He's a great guy. Fantastic man.
But the office was small, and it was just hard to, bring clients and grow the business. So once we realized, okay, I'm going to join, I need an office too. Rick only had one office. So we wanted something that was, downtown St. Pete, kind of hip, trendy, which landed us where we are now. However, being in the era of wanting to accumulate real estate, we realized, okay, well, here we are paying somebody, $3,000 for an office building or an office space. Why not purchase our own and put that money towards an asset that will hopefully appreciate? And we began looking for an office building.
Yes, and so starting out, you have to be lean, but if you want to grow, you have to present your firm in a way that is impressive to the clients that walk in. And so, when I was starting out, it was great in that period of time of the firm, but we had to grow, and we found a place in downtown St. Pete, like you said, was hip, trendy, right next to the Ale and the Witch and Paradeco, right on Beach Drive. So we loved the location. It fit Jenna and I great. And, it's been a great place for us to shoot our podcast. But we felt that, we wanted to invest in an asset that not only would give our family, something that they can hold on to, but at the same time grow the firm and take on additional employees and, do different things with the firm that we're just not able to do here in this limited space. So we started looking at commercial properties and sort of figuring out how to finance the purchase of a commercial property. And that's when we stumbled upon the SBA loan for business owners looking for an owner-occupied property. And so what we learned is that the SBA, with the partnership of a community bank such as the Bank of Tampa, who we're using, and they've been great. Between those two, the SBA and the community bank will finance 90% of the purchase. So that requires only a 10% down payment. And you can also finance renovations within that. And so one of the things, that was definitely enticing for us because obviously, the less of a down payment you have to make, the more the better it is and the better you're able to stretch your budget. And so we started looking. We had a budget in mind, but we quickly, well, I wouldn't say quickly, we realized during this 2-year stretch that it's not easy to find a building that you like and want.
Yes, and I figured, okay, well, it's going to be the same as house hunting for your residential property. Definitely not. There are so many factors that go into a commercial property. Is it zoned properly? If it's not zoned properly, can you get it zoned to be office? Parking. Does it have the required number of parking spots if you want to try to rezone it to a commercial or retail office space? So there were definitely lots of things that we learned along the way. The other thing that I think we realized quickly is how are commercial properties priced? Because we would see one property that was priced less, one property that was priced more. Same square footage, same, rough area, but what type of things were taken into consideration? So one of the things was ingress and egress. If it has 2 entrances or 2 possible entrances, that gives it more value, even if it's a smaller building or, not as nice. So just so many different things that came up in our search for a building.
And I'm sure everyone's familiar with Zillow. You go on Zillow and you want to look at the $5 million home that you're probably never going to have, but it's fun to look at. Well, on the commercial side, there's an app called LoopNet. And so that, similar to Zillow, shows you all the commercial properties that are listed for sale. And, like Jenna said, with the pricing of commercial properties, it's all over the map. And we almost got the impression that these building owners are just anchoring extremely high, seeing if anyone will, nibble at the price that they set, and then, work down from there. And so we came to realize that the prices that we were seeing on these commercial properties were extremely inflated, sitting on the market for who knows how long, because again, this search took us about 2 years. There is still, the same property sitting on the market right now as we're talking, and I think we realized that a lot of commercial owners are just having their property listed, just seeing if someone might be willing to pay an exorbitant amount for the building, and so that was challenging, not really knowing, the value of a building, the true value of a building, because in Zillow you can see, recently sold at X price, right? Well, you can't necessarily see that on LoopNet. You don't have that option. So it was harder to figure that out. But luckily, we did have a great commercial realtor.
Yes, I was just going to say that. I think it's so crucial to have a commercial realtor if you are buying or selling a commercial property. Mm-hmm. We had Eli Dioso on, who was Rick's high school buddy. He was on episode, one of our first 4 episodes, I believe.
In season 1, I think.
Yeah, in season 1. A wealth of knowledge when it came to commercial property. And not to skip ahead too much, but the property that we found, and we'll get more into the story of how we found it, but we almost lucked out that the realtor selling the property was not commercial, because the building, which is legitimate an office building, was only on the MLS. Not many people are on the MLS looking for a commercial building. So in the commercial property realm, they use CoStar or a LoopNet. So, we're getting, notifications sent to our phone of, a new property showed up. Well, this one, as again, Rick will get into it, but it never showed up on our phone. So I feel like we got extremely lucky in that it was only listed on the MLS. But again, it was a residential realtor listing the property. So buying or selling, highly recommend getting a commercial real estate agent that knows commercial.
And so one of the things we learned is, we talked about zoning and making sure that the property that you're getting is zoned for an office space. So there's a lot of areas, especially within St. Pete and some in Seminole, where it could be either or. It could be a residential, or if you wanted to, you can make it an office. So, for example, if you're traveling down Fifth Avenue going west towards the beach in St. Petersburg, or if you're traveling down First Avenue north going west towards the beach, or if you're on First Avenue south coming towards downtown. Those are corridors where the property is zoned what we call CRT, which is basically commercial residential traditional, or another way of saying you could live there or you could turn it into an office. You just, if you want to turn it into an office and it wasn't previously zoned or being used as an office, you got to make sure it's ADA compliant. You got to make sure that you meet the parking requirements, which we came to learn in St. Pete. I think you need a parking space for every 400 square feet of office space. And so these are the things that we were looking at, because again, looking through LoopNet, looking at all the commercial properties and not finding anything, either whether it was out of our price range or just not what we were looking for. We started looking at Zillow, looking at the properties that, were residential but could be turned into commercial. So we started looking at those and, just trying to get creative, because, obviously we were looking for something, we were getting frustrated. So you try to use every resource you can to find that place. And, luckily we eventually found a place, but it wasn't with some, heartache. And, at some point, I know we had the conversation about a building which we didn't end up going with, but, it was almost out of desperation, maybe frustration. We were settling,
and
I want to say.
Yeah, and I think it was a good reminder for us too, just to know that everything's on God's timing.
Yes.
As much as we want to feel in control and say, well, let's do this because we think it's the best decision at this point financially, or we need to let our leasing agent know we want to, stop it. If it doesn't feel right, there is a reason. And so just as we were about to say, let's put in another offer on this one property that we had looked at, but we knew it just wasn't right for our firm, we held off a couple of days, which was good. Rick was in trial. And when trial ended, we ended up having a day to ourselves.
Yes.
And you can take it from there.
So, yeah, I was in trial. It ended. The next day, Jenna and I decided we just wanted to have sort of a low-key day. We went to the office just for a little bit. And as we were driving back home, we said, hey, why don't we just take First Avenue North on our way home. And like I said, that's that street that on the left-hand side, it could either be residential or commercial. And oddly enough, last year, we had looked at a property on First Ave North, sort of towards the west side, and I had liked it. It was within our price range. Jenna had some reservations, but when she saw it, she actually was surprised that she liked it, but we ended up passing on it. And again, timing is everything. We still had a year left on our lease, a little over a year left on our lease. And oddly enough, that ended up selling. And then, a year later, we found ourselves sort of kicking ourselves like, do we pass up a good opportunity? And so, we decided to drive down First Avenue North again, like I had done so many times. I think they call it driving for dollars. If you're investing in real estate, looking for rentals, one of the things that people do is they quote unquote drive for dollars. And you're just looking at houses as you're driving along, seeing if there's a for sale sign or seeing any sort of indication that the property's for sale. So we drove down First Avenue North, and we pass 58th Street, still going west, and literally 2 houses down from the property we passed on last year, we see a for sale sign, and I
make a U-turn.
Yeah, we make a U-turn. Clearly looks like an office building. And so, and again, we have no place to be. This is a day that we're just kind of taking to ourselves, and we park, we get out. And, what was your first impression when you saw it?
I liked it. I was like, let's go look around in the windows. So, it was windows on all sides, which we had seen some like medical offices that didn't have windows. And I'm like, no, when you're an attorney or a professional, like you strive for the window office. So, that was a major thing. So this one had all windows. We literally walked the entire property, looked into every window, and I was like, Rick, this is it. Like, can we afford it? Can we not? I think you had the same, impression of this is our building.
Yes, and so we see the realtor sign in the front yard. We look at the dirt around the post. It looks
Fresh.
brand new, freshly dug. And we look on LoopNet, we look on Zillow. The property's not listed, so we're clearly intrigued. So we call the number on the sign, and the realtor answers. And I ask, "Is this for sale?" And she says yes. She gives us the list price, and I completely gave away our our position on it. I was far too excited. The listing agent would later tell our friend Eli, yeah, they were really excited when they initially called me on the phone. So they clearly knew we wanted the building, and that was it. We were under contract in less than a week.
Yes, and I will say it is the first building out of many that we looked at that we both agreed on. And again, It just goes back to, you have to trust your gut, you have to trust God, you have to trust the timing. I think we felt like we were settling with anything else, but everything felt so in line. We had asked Eli how long had this been on the market. So we went out there October 2nd. It had just hit the market September 30th. There wasn't even a lockbox on the building yet. And we obviously still went to go see it. I think it was that same day.
Same day.
And we had the same feeling that we did when we peeked in front of, in all of the windows, that this was it. And hopefully everything goes according to plan. Yes. And we closed. The inspections have gone well. Financing seems to be all in place. But just very, very happy. The other thing is, in terms of financing, we want to finance a sign. So we want as big of a sign that we can. But what we have also realized, you can't just place a billboard in front of your office building. There are laws in place to say how big your sign can be. Can you have a pylon? Does it have to just be a monument sign? How big can it be based on the square footage? Can it be backlit? Can it have lighting? Can it have uplighting? We are hopeful that it can have lighting. Our sign guy's still looking into that. But again, just more things that come up that you don't necessarily take into consideration when you're driving by a property. But just again, the experience that we've been able to learn throughout the process has been absolutely phenomenal.
And you talk about signage, that's if you're erecting a new sign. So, one of the things that increases the value of commercial properties if you're looking to buy is if they already have a pre-existing sign in place, or a pylon sign, a large sign, fronting the main road. Those types of signs are grandfathered in. So, there's some added value there because it doesn't necessarily have to comply with the current, codes and regulations. It's only if you're erecting a new sign. Again, one of the things to look for is, does the property that you want, do you want a pre-existing sign so you don't have to spend the money? Because it's not cheap to erect a new sign, but it is worth the investment. And luckily, through the SBA 504 loan, that is one of the things that you can sort of tie in with the financing.
And I just also want to touch on the fact, the Bank of Tampa that we're using. The level of customer service compared to what you would normally see with some type of big banks such as Chase, Bank of America, has been absolutely phenomenal with them. I mean, we have texted, called, emailed after hours on the weekend, asking for things, especially when we were in negotiations. And they have been great in terms of getting back to us, getting us answers to what we need. And it's just been an overall great experience, especially I think not just dealing with the big bank that you're used to dealing with. So I think finding a banker that's willing to work with you, that's willing to put in that effort and have great customer service is super important.
And it wasn't until I think this time last year did we realize the value of having a community bank, kind of on your side, helping you achieve, what you want, your business goals. So we moved over from Chase to Bank of Tampa this time last year. And, like you said, with the big banks, you're kind of just a drop in the bucket. You're a number. They're not going to, bend over backwards or answer your call after hours. Whereas with our experience with the Bank of Tampa and the SBA lender that we're using, who's been great as well. There's only a couple here in Pinellas County, I think two.
Or I think one in Pinellas, one in Hillsborough.
Yeah,
Is it?
maybe
Yeah.
one. So there's not a lot, and if you want to reach out to us, on our YouTube page, or we can give you the contact information. But they've been fantastic. When we saw the building that we're under contract now, we immediately wanted to put in an offer. So we're scrambling to get a pre-approval letter, and he got it to us within 24 hours. And so, I can't, underestimate the value of having a community bank behind you during this process.
So we have obviously made sure that we have a dedicated podcast studio in the new building. Yes. So very soon when we start doing our episodes, you will notice a refresh for our episodes.
And one last thing, we were, when we were looking for a property, we wanted to take advantage of some added space that we could rent out, because with this loan through the SBA, yes, it does have to be owner occupied, which means your business has to occupy the property that you're moving into, but you can rent out 49% of the space. So, kind of like what you hear with house hacking on the residential side, why not have a couple of tenants help pay the mortgage? So that's what we were really trying to look for, is that perfect building that would not only be big enough for our law firm, but also we can rent out space to help cover some of the costs. And it's difficult to find. It was really hard, but luckily the place that we have now has a couple of office spaces that we can try to rent out to a couple of aspiring new lawyers that are starting their practice. And so we really hope that one day we can have that building just filled to capacity with multiple lawyers, podcast studio, conference room, our offices obviously, and so we're excited.
One last point before we wrap up this episode on the 49-51%. You cannot use the potential rental income if you plan to rent it out to take into consideration what you can afford for the loan. So. Yes. When you have a residential rental or some other type of rental, a lot of times the bank will take into consideration what that rental income is in terms of what you can afford. If you're using SBA with the 10% down, even if you do plan to rent it out, they will not take that in consideration. Just a good piece of advice to know.
Yes, yeah. So, all right, well, we're going to do another segment on what happened to Florida Man. So stick around. We'll be right back. So for this segment on what happened to Florida Man, we've got another local Hillsborough County case of a 19-year-old, this happened last year, who wanted to see a sunset one evening. And so what he did was he snuck into one of the 5G towers and scaled the tower to the tune of 1,600 feet. I'm not sure who first noticed him, but Hillsborough County Sheriff eventually noticed him up there. And they called in the aviation unit, which got some pretty good footage of him scaling this cell tower. And so eventually he was brought down and he was arrested for trespassing. And again, told the police when asked what he was doing, he said he wanted to see the sunset. So a pretty valid reason to also, if you're trying to, accomplish a feat, I can see, that's a pretty tough challenge. So. But he did get arrested. It's against the law to do that, so don't go out and do that. The end of the story is that after an unsuccessful attempt at PTI, which is a diversion program, he ended up getting sentenced to a fine, and that's about it. So interesting story for this young man. I don't think he's going to be scaling any cell towers anytime soon. The thing that you said when I first told you about this story was the radiation. And
well, I'll talk about the radiation in a minute, but the sunset, being in Hillsborough, we live so close to the beaches. I am sure that if he had just drove out to the beach, that would be a much more beautiful sunset without the risk of getting any criminal charge. And yes, talk about radiation. He should probably pick up the book Radiation Nation. and learn some more about that.
Yes, absolutely. So, again, thank you for tuning in to our podcast, From Courtroom to Carline, a legal parenting podcast. Stay tuned for the next episode. And just as another quick reminder, if you're looking for free CLE hours, we've got 10 free CLE hours for you. You just have to watch all of season 1 and then email our assistant, support@accidentarrest.com, and we'll give you the code. So stay tuned for our next episode.